France stops fewer migrants than us, and we give them £480 million. Now, Becca Hutson, I absolutely understand you think we should be a haven for the one and all world, but you would understand people's frustration. I'm trying really hard here, Benedict. People... did you hear the lady from Southport? She's 65, Colette. She can't get a dental appointment because the dentist says, I'm not taking anybody else, and the rest of you can do one because we only deal with migrants, and she's slightly angry. What do you make of this? Why are we giving them £500 million, Bex?
Well, I think firstly, this just shows how expensive it is trying to deal with the crisis in the Channel. France are going to spend £3 billion trying to stop boats crossing. So what we're offering them is pretty much loose change to govern 90 miles of coastline, which is pretty significant, isn't it? And I think also what we need to remember is that crossing the Channel is only one of the kind of irregular means that people enter this country. They also can get in through the back of lorries. They can use falsified papers. And the thing that's alluring about coming to the UK isn't, a stay on the Bibby Stockholm where you kind of risk your life if you might for fear of coming into contact with some horrible bacteria. But it's because it's probably going to take you 5 or 6 years to get processed because we haven't invested any money in this system for 13 years. So if you were going to arrive in the UK and be swiftly dealt with and processed as either a deserving asylum seeker, refugee or not, and it was all going to be done in a week, I don't think we'd have people risking life and limb crossing the Channel, one of the biggest, busiest boat crossings in the world. But instead they come here because they know that they've got 5 or 6 years, and as your caller previously said, there's an easy way to then sort of disappear into the community. So it's not just about stopping people coming on the boats, it's about the whole immigration infrastructure that allows us to sift out unworthy and undeserving people in this country and find the legitimate refugees and asylum seekers who need to come to this country and who deserve our care and our sanctuary.
I must say, I only ever see her at night, but actually in the morning, to be fair, Steven Woolfe, and I'll bring Benedict in a sec, what Becca... We wouldn't essentially agree, Beck, because she's a bit nicer than me, but... it is without any shadow of a doubt, wherever you sit on this, our processing system is devoid of any investment and sense. And surely that backlog and surely all of this, of course we're going to concentrate with the media, 500 million to the French, but surely if we were able to process these migrants and determine whether they are illegal or in fact refugees, then this situation would be better, would it not, Stephen?
Well, I'm going to agree with Becca in the sense that what we've got is a system that is actually failing, and the calculations of how many people are coming over and staying here are increased because of that failing system. But where I disagree with Becca is because what we do find in our research is about 15,000 people last year, 16,000 the year before, and the numbers are similar for the previous 5 years, are actually rejected from the asylum system. So another failing is that we don't deport them. So here you have a situation where nearly 70,000 people have been rejected from asylum applications in the past 5 to 6 years, and we don't deport them anyway. So what will happen is even if we allow them to come over, not through the boats, they will still decide to come over and work with the people smugglers because they know they can stay here even if their applications are rejected. And it's not just about the £500 million that we've given to the French as well. In the past 2 to 3 years, between 2010, Jeremy, and 15, when I was first visiting the camps, we've given the French £316 million then. So we've nearly given them £1 billion since 2010. That's not small change. And we're defending a border that they should be doing themselves. And I can understand the anger of people when they say, why are we giving them money and it's not stopped?
Benedict?
I think that figure there, over $1 billion given to the French government to deal with this crisis, and it's had almost no impact whatsoever. And you think the two things that you can do...
Is it loose change, as Becca said?
It's a significant amount of money, even on a sort of a governmental level. What we're giving them is about 1/6 of their overall budget. It's not nothing. You've got to think about this, right? £1 billion overall. How many houses does that build, and how many genuine refugees can you put in there? On the flip side, how many flights does it pay for back to Albania, or another very large proportion of people coming over, India? As far as I'm aware, there is no war in India at the moment. In fact, we're trying to sign a free trade deal with them. It's a country that is fairly easy to get from from India to the UK, but lots of people are coming illegally from there. How many flights could we lay on there? And as I said earlier, it's about supply and demand. If you make it very clear to people who are breaking the law, if they've thrown their documents away, they arrive, that you will just be deported straight away. Unless of course you are, very small number of places, Ukrainian, Iraqi, Syrian maybe. Even so, you then need to go through a very clear vetting process because there are massive security risks. Unless you fall into that category, if you've come here illegally, straight away. And actually, we could put off a lot of people if that was our policy. Far fewer would bother to come in the first place.
Rebecca Hutson?
I think the chaps are loath to say it, but I think they're all agreeing with me. The fact is, our processing is the problem here. As Benedict says, people arriving from India don't necessarily warrant refugee status. So if we bothered to spend any money on this over the past 13 years. And I would disagree. I think that our contribution to trying to solve this in comparison to France's is really small. I think we don't need to spend our money pursuing bloodthirsty policies through the courts. And actually, we could put people in migrant processing centres and get these people on flights back to whence they came far more efficiently. And I think Benedict's also right. We need to make it easier for legitimate refugees to come to this country. At the moment, you can only get safe passage if you're coming from Ukraine or Hong Kong. And there are various countries around the world that deserve the UK's asylum system, whether that's places in East Africa, Yemen, Syria. They aren't fun places.
I don't think anywhere in East Africa deserves
and we've had a hand in the situations there. So we need to make it easier for legitimate refugees to get here and actually pay for people and pay for a system that sifts out the undeserving people.
What do you say to what Steven said about the 15 or 16,000 that were rejected?
Well, that's all part of the same thing. We have this porous system, don't we? We don't have people who are paid and incentivized in that system to police it properly, because these are people on minimum wages. They're following policies that don't really make sense. They're stretched, and we don't have an adequate provision to do it properly. I think we are all saying the same thing. The boys just really don't want to.
Stephen, jump in, because he's muttering. Feel free to jump in. Put her in her place. Go on. What do you want to say?
Look, the salaries that the people who are getting in the assessment centres are nowhere near minimum wage, because they're working for the civil servants and they get reasonable benefits from it as well as pensions. And Becca knows that. And I mean, that's really not the point. The point is, where we agree, Becca, is that the asylum processing system to assess whether an asylum application is poor and slow, but the government has started to input huge sums of money into it. They've got a staffing process and new technology. I know that from talking to them myself. But where you're incorrect and where your system will fail is because out of those 15,000, and indeed the many asylum seekers that come over here, the top 10 countries are Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Eritrea, China, India, Albania. And apart from Albania, we have no returns policy. The Labour government didn't have one before the Tories came in. The Tories won't have one, and we can't get one. So these people will never be returned. And what we will find is, irrespective if we have an ability to bring genuine asylum seekers over, those countries will still come because they know they can stay here and never be removed.